Mr. Shiner, we are now officially live, so you can proceed with the meeting.
Very well. Let's get started. I'd like to call to order the August 13th, 2020 special board meeting for the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of America,
of America,
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and
justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Shiner,
Here.
Mr. Sarnes,
Present.
Ms. Beveridge, Ms. Bretz,
Here.
Ms. Callaway Rodriguez,
Here.
Mrs. Sioka,
Present.
Mr. Feldbush,
Here.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Kendris,
Here.
Mr. Leonard, Ms. Maines,
Here.
Ms. Mock,
Here.
Ms. Schmidt,
Here.
Mr. Schrock,
here.
Ms. Smith, Ms. Thomas,
Here.
Mrs. Urban.
Here.
13 present, 4 absent.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody who's in attendance tonight to this special meeting. It's an important meeting that we certainly need to hold. So again, I'm glad you're here. Executive session announcement. There was no executive session held prior to tonight's meeting. And as for comments on the agenda, we have not received any comments from citizens on tonight's agenda. So then we can move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion for approval of the minutes for the June 23rd, 2020 meeting.
Motion
So
Mock.
moved, Urban.
Second, Sioka.
Very well. It's been moved and seconded to approve the June 23rd minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, on to financial reports. I'd like to have a motion for the approval of FR 2021-01 through FR 2021-05.
So move Feldbush.
Second, Schmidt.
Oh, I failed to ask if there were any items that need to be pulled for discussion. So does anybody have any items to pull for discussion? Okay, if not, then we can go ahead with a roll call vote, please. Christy?
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
Ms. Bretz,
Yes.
Ms. Callaway Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush,
Yes.
Mr. Kendris,
Yes.
Ms. Maines,
Yes.
Ms. Mock,
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Schrock,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner.
Yes.
13 yes, motion carried. Motions carried.
All right, committee reports. I guess I'd like to open up the meeting tonight to acknowledge that what you all very much are aware of, that with COVID-19, everybody's been involved very heavily in the last months trying to prepare for opening of schools. And in conjunction with doing that for the WIU, we have some health and safety plans that are on the board, on the agenda for approval tonight. Very important that we approve those items because they need to get off to the state of Pennsylvania Education Department. So I'm glad you're able to make time in your busy schedules to get here. And with that, I guess I'll move on. I'm not aware at this time if anybody has committee reports. So I'll just run down the committees, but if you have something you'd like to add for our meeting, please let me know. Curriculum services,
Nothing this evening.
okay. Financial services, Bill Feldbush,
No report.
okay. Student services, Sharon Mock,
No report.
and technology and infrastructure services, Bill Leonard's not here. I don't know. Mike Kell he's here, I believe. But I guess there's no report. So with that, let's move on to the executive director report.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity. This evening, we wanted to provide the board with an overview of the IU's health and safety plans. Instead of having one, we actually have 5 different plans that Dr. Thomas is going to preview for us this evening. Also on the agenda this evening, you'll see that there is a motion to accept an application or to submit an application for flexible instructional days. That application is for local education agencies to be able to use flexible instructional days when there will be weather-related issues and the like to assist in meeting the 180 and 990 requirements. And so our main focus this evening during the report is going to be the health and safety plan. So Dr. Thomas, I'm going to throw it your way for an overview of our plans. And I should say before he starts that it truly was a team effort to create these plans. The number of people that were involved, too numerous to mention all of them, and I would be fearful of forgetting one just because there were so many people that were involved with it. So it truly was an IU-wide effort, and doing it in such a timely fashion, and with the guidance shifting at times underneath our feet. Dr. Thomas led an incredible process in creating these plans. So with that, Dr. Thomas, now I'd ask for you to provide an overview.
Well, thank you, Dr. Conway, for that, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to sort of start at 60,000 feet and come closer to the Earth as we look across these plans. So I will share my screen. This is the first. Dr. Conway, if you could unshare the agenda manager momentarily.
You got it.
Okay, so to give you an overall picture of what is happening in our programs, I have 2 quick slides to share. Everyone can see the current screen. Do we need to zoom in? Everybody good?
I'm fine.
So each box covers the 5 main areas that the intermediate unit impacts students, anywhere from young children age 3 through young adults age 21. Before I get started, understand that our learners between ages 6 and 21, we'll be referring to that as school age, when kids have the ability to go into kindergarten and at the time that their educational services are available up through the age that they turn 21. We will also make reference to, we refer to it as early childhood services or early intervention, which is actually an IU operated program top to bottom. It's a mini school district and it's within the IU. We have approximately somewhere in a given year, anywhere between 1,400 and 1,600 learners represented among students that attend our programs, receive speech, occupational therapy, or physical therapy, even in preschools and other programs across the county. So we operate early intervention, which is predominantly special education classrooms, but we also offer speech, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, and deaf, hard of hearing, and vision for pretty much all of the remaining entities that provide any sort of preschool program age 3, 4, and 5 across the county. We have multiple sites for that program. And so instead of talking specifically about EI up front, I want to start by each individual facility. And I'm going to stop at the last one because that is one of our more detailed plans. So we're going to start with the Clairview School. And we found out early, because of the Clairview School operating like a normal school building, it represents about 0.2% of the students in Westmoreland County, approximately 100 students. Usually like last year, we were probably as high as 1 of 10 at one point. We may start the year this year at 90. So it averages around 100 students. We have chosen to give parents exclusive choice from full virtual up to 4 days of instruction. And the reason for not 5 is this is a building with many students that have a medically compromised condition in some cases, particularly respiratory, where we do see tracheotomy tubes and other sorts of respiratory related supportive technology for them. We are choosing on our Wednesdays to have a deep clean of the building. Mr. Vaughn and the infrastructure and technology services staff will be cleaning the building top to bottom each Wednesday, with the exception of the first day of school. Since our first day of school falls on a Wednesday, our first week, August 26th, is going to be 3 consecutive days of instruction, and then we'll deep clean over the weekend. So when we go into that first full week of school, we will then be in our pattern, Monday and Tuesday in person, Wednesday online, Thursday and Friday back and in person. And I want to add that also on Saturdays, we would have an additional deep clean for the end of the week. So basically the building is receiving 2 treatments of cleaning every single week. We do have parents that have elected to go online, but rather than say it has to fit a specific schedule, our classes are going to have a blend of both synchronous and asynchronous instruction via Google Classroom, via Zoom. And so those teachers were going to be working with those families. They already actually have. Mrs. Suchko and Dr. McGee have been handling a lot of parent requests. Actually, very few so far for exclusively online, but they're also coordinating, and this is the reason I'm saying up to the 4 days. Some parents are electing to come in for in-person instructions on the day that their child receives a related therapy, such as speech, occupational therapy, or physical therapy, because that is a more difficult, speech is not, but occupational and physical therapies are pretty difficult to provide unless the parent is helping the student. So we're letting parent have the choice. It's a small enough building. In this case, we do have the economy and the blessing of being able to do that and be very agile at how we provide that. So I anticipate the end of this, we're still working through parents, but we will have a handful of students that will be 100% online, the whole way up to the 4-person full, what would be our full in-person opportunity with everybody online on Wednesdays. For our staff in that facility, they will be physically in the building Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And we will also be giving them the opportunity to work in a site, not necessarily Clairview, if they need a private area. It's impossible for them to work from home on Wednesdays. They would be able to come to the administrative building where we have designated areas for them to do that. They would still provide their telework or their virtual settings, their virtual instruction, but they would not necessarily be teleworking from home unless they request that option, and they will be working from home, which you're going to hear that theme throughout each one of these facilities as we talk about that, because in some cases, it's not necessarily conducive always for somebody to work from home. And so with our internet services, with our workspaces, we will be providing those options to them. So Clairview, to summarize, 4 days in person, 1 day online at maximum, and anything less than that is by parent choice. And Mrs. Suchko and Dr. McGee are, again, surveying all parents and making those accommodations. I also want to point out, too, that it is important that since we are very, very engaged with our families, in particular at the Clairview School, if a parent decides 1 week that they would say, you know what, I'd like to increase or I'd like to decrease, we are going to be agile enough to make those accommodations. We're only asking that we do that as a week about. So, give us a week to adjust. We'll go to the next week and we'll make that adjustment on a week's notice. So you're not going to have to wait till like the end of a quarter or the end of a semester to do that. Again, it's a the ability to be highly agile for that particular student population and family population. Going down at the left, we have the Greensburg Partial Program, which is not our facility, but we provide the educational services for this program. The building is actually operated as a mental health center or partial hospitalization program by Centerville Clinics. And this, again, is going to be up to 5 days in person. That is a Centerville decision. Our staff will be on site, again, providing virtual instruction or in-person instruction up to 5 days, again, by parent choice. Mr. Demagon and that particular staff is surveying parents along with Ann Gatos, who's the director of Centerville Clinics, and working through that. Centerville operates the physical building, and they are doing all the deep cleaning after hours on second shift, approximately after 3 p.m. daily. Going to the right-hand side, you'll notice I highlighted the early intervention program. Again, over a given school year, 1,500 to 1,700 students and families get engaged in this program. It's big. It's a mini school district. It's as far as the IU is concerned, because we are the school. This is our program. And so, again, during that process, we will see up to a full week of instruction face-to-face in some cases. Now, the uniqueness in this particular program, if you notice on the 5th line down, it's right under where it says tele-intervention predominant. You'll notice underneath there, it says classrooms 2, 3, or 4 days a week, AM or PM. That's the way that early intervention was designed pre-COVID. Students would engage 2, 3, or 4 days per week, and they would be engaging only morning or only afternoon. We do have one program that runs 4 days a week for a 4-hour in the morning instead of a 3-hour in the morning. But again, it still has that flexibility. So we're not going to see a 5-day-a-week effect in our early intervention program either. Now, the uniqueness for early intervention, there are 15 teachers and 26 speech-language pathologists. It's enormous. The reason the speech number is higher is a lot of the specialized instruction and services that we provide in early intervention oftentimes is speech related. And you'll hear of students that are speech only. They don't necessarily have an academic or developmental deficit, but a speech deficit. So in this program, speech therapy is going to follow the tele-intervention. And there's a reason for this. And I think when I get later into itinerant services, we don't want our speech or itinerant services ever to serve as a vector. So as they go from site to site, if they will be exposed to COVID, then that becomes an inherent vector. So we found so much positive and supportive ability to be highly agile for speech as a related service, and to do that via tele-intervention, via Zoom, and to be providing those services in real time to families, and a tremendous amount of family support and participation since the shutdown. Early intervention also runs as a 12-month program. So actually they're in session this current week, online, completely online. They do 165 days of instruction between Labor Day and Memorial Day, and then 5 days in June, 5 days in July, 5 days in August. And this just happens to be the week that EI is in right now. So shifting away from that piece of EI, which was speech related, I would like to come back to the classrooms, because our classrooms are hosted across 5 different sites in Westmoreland County. We have 10 total classrooms and 5 purely itinerant teachers. So we have 15 teachers that support early intervention instruction in classroom settings. I'm going to talk about the 10. We have 4 teachers at the Jeanette McKee Elementary School. It's sort of on the middle school side of the building, right off of Lowry Avenue. In the basement, it's a very, very nice sort of sequestered area that's been in place now for several years. 4 classrooms there. We have 3 classrooms actually at the Clairview School. So we have early intervention learners in 3 of the classrooms on the north side of the building, a little bit past the office as you go back to the right. We have 1 early intervention classroom at Latrobe Elementary School in the Greater Latrobe School District. We have 1 elementary classroom at Kiski Area Upper Elementary School in the Kiski Area School District. And we have 1 early intervention classroom at West Newton Elementary School in the Yawk School District. Each one of those individual classrooms are following the health and safety plan of that respective district. That's the supervisor and the teacher and the classroom assistant is working with those respective plans. And so the cooperation we've received from our school districts has been outstanding in communication and open lines of communication so that we follow that. Particularly that falls in the line of watching pickup and drop off, where so we don't get in the way of the buses, and that we promote social distancing with little ones. Back to our own facility, Clairview. Clairview will again be in that situation for those classrooms, follow a Clairview schedule. And in those 4 classrooms, Jeanette would follow Jeanette's schedule. For the remaining 5 teachers that do not have classrooms, they go to homes all across the county. And again, while tele-intervention will be predominant, there will be a few cases in which we will have to go into homes to provide services. And our staff have been supportive of that, and we've been working through macro and micro issues on that particular topic. The small sliver box underneath early intervention refers to the Westmoreland County adjudicated campus. So if you're familiar with Westmoreland Manor, as you go down south on Old 66, 119, this is where we have the Westmoreland County Prison, the Westmoreland County Detention Center, and the Westmoreland County Youth Shelter. Now, the detention center and the youth shelter are in the same physical building. The prison is a slightly different location. But we do have teachers in all 3 of those facilities. We have 2 teachers at the Westmoreland County Detention Center, 1 teacher at the Westmoreland County Youth Homeless Shelter, and 1 teacher at the Westmoreland County Prison. For the obvious design of those particular buildings, because the population is sequestered, there is only an in-person option at this particular building. Our teachers will go in, and they will provide instruction with all protective precautions in place, and offer those services to students. And so they will follow all guidelines of the detention center, the youth homeless shelter, and the jail. So that is not an area where we will do any tele-intervention whatsoever. We certainly support instruction with a lot of internet-based resources, but the intervention would be in person only. And finally, at the bottom, which I will highlight here in a minute, our plan is definitely our most broad area, because this is where we support we definitely support all 17 districts in some way, with an audiologist, with speech. In the school age context now, we have an additional 16, excuse me, it's actually 16 head count, 16 SLPs in the school age program that support districts all across the county. And we also support districts with hearing and vision support. This is where we see tele-intervention also being predominant, with some exceptions where it's necessary to go into a school and to have direct interaction with a student. As we've had to be very detailed about this plan, I want to actually share it, and I want to show you what we are doing. There are hints of this particular plan that do not necessarily fit the PDE template that if you review the other 4 plans, they were sort of in a stock template that was given to us by the Department of Education. So let me just share that subsequent document. So this is the WIU itinerant services reopening guidance and keyword guidance. As we go down through this document I'm going to highlight a couple of things on here for you to see, and I think it's a little bit too big right there. There are really 5 different options on this particular document. So if you are a school age speech therapist, school age deaf hard of hearing teacher, our educational audiologist, or a school-based teacher of the visually impaired, these are the guidelines, or these are the areas or models that we're seeing across the county, where we're providing virtual instruction directly to the student in the home, virtual instruction directly to the student while at school, in some cases, if they don't want us to come into a sequestered area within a building. We would also provide virtual instruction in the school with paraprofessional support. So that example is if there is an instructional aide or a support person that will be with the student while the teacher or speech therapist is working directly with the student via telepresence. We do have the option of face-to-face instruction. And finally, we have the option of hybridized model. So we have some kids that will be receiving services at home or at school, depending upon where their service schedule falls in a given week. keep in mind, all 17 districts in our county have a nuance to how they're doing school, how they're strategizing their overall plan for this. And so we do have a district that is starting the year purely virtual. We have a district that's starting the year almost, I think now at 5 days per week. So we're sort of all over that continuum. And so this particular service program in our IU has to be highly agile to support those needs. I want to scroll down and show you all of the things that, and this was a team effort. Amanda Winor, our student services, special education supervisor for itinerant services, did an awesome job. Kudos to her for a lot of detailed, deep work. She consulted with districts. She consulted with our own internal team to develop this document. And it's a solid document, hopefully to go forward even beyond COVID, because you can imagine when we have our itinerant services staff, one of the benefits of seeing opportunities for tele-intervention or tele-instruction is that the travel time and costs can be decreased if it is appropriate for a student to receive services that way. So we did talk about a lot of the considerations for face-to-face instruction. We would be remiss to not mention that we're not coming into a school. We're not going to penetrate deep into the building. We're hoping to have, and we've asked principals and our special ed directors across districts to provide a space that's very close to an outside door or close to the office. It can be consistently used for a scheduled session with a student if face-to-face instruction is necessary, so that you don't have the therapist or the teacher going into the building, taking the student out of a classroom, walking them down the hall, and then bringing them to the area where they're going to work. A student would be scheduled to be automatically ready to go by the time the therapist comes in. When I get down here into the instruction in the home, again, more bullet points, but I want to focus on the PPE that we're providing to our itinerant staff. And as an aside here, I know Amanda wrote this in for speech, deaf, hard of hearing, and vision and audiology, but we're using this exact same PPE protocol and list for even our EI staff that work in itinerant supported settings in homes, in speech, etc. We're giving them washable masks, as all of our IU employees have received masks or gaiters at this point. There is a 2 foot by 2 foot sneeze guard. It's an acrylic plastic option that fits nicely into a small bag. Can be literally set up in 3 pieces on a table, and it has an area to slide underneath if there has to be anything there. And so I point that out because sometimes we sit shoulder to shoulder with kids when we give that work. This is going to be work that we're going to intrinsically put socially a physical distance between us and the sneeze guard there in case there would be a sneeze or some reaction, hopefully with the protective on the face as well as the sneeze guard will have that as well. You'll notice the third bullet says 1 to 2 clear masks. And the key point here is speech and hearing. There are literally masks. Of course, you can't see somebody's mouth move. And so we have purchased strategic, a company that provides clear masks for our deaf, hard of hearing, and speech staff if they need it, and they have this as an automatic plan that they can implement if that's necessary to have on site. We're also giving them 5 disposable masks just in case something would fail. The cloth mask, by accident, dropped or something like that. They have a backup plan. A bottle of disinfectant, then it's alcohol-based. 2 bottles of paper towels, 2 bottles of hand sanitizer, also alcohol-based, and 1 face shield. And the face shield, the best way to describe it, looks like a welding helmet. It has a ring that goes around the head, and it's a clear concave acrylic shield that still gets worn even with the mask on. It just provides an additional layer of protection. Staff will be making decisions upon that as they enter a building and they see the socially distanced protocols. We anticipate that by giving them this PPE, it's empowering them to make those individual decisions when they're in those situations. I do want to point out 2 more things here. So the virtual instruction and teleintervention, core staff, a little bit different than a classroom. It's going to be Zoom. For our speech language services, we have a subscription to what's referred to as Ultimate SLP, where we can actually Zoomcast an iPad screen directly in real time for the students or even a group therapy session and provide that in real time. Down towards the bottom, I think Dr. Conway will talk about telework a bit later in tonight's board meeting. So related to telework, they're following the same procedures that we've piloted with Act 93. And the last section here towards the bottom talks about return to work protocols. And this is standard language that we've lifted in essence from the CDC guidance and included in all 5 of our plans. Symptom-based strategy and test-based strategy for temperatures. In our own facilities, we'll be doing our temp checks. In school district facilities, we're hoping, we're looking for cooperation for those assessments to be done prior to our itinerant staff going into the building. And again, you can read down through all of the medical notation. One key point about assessing those temperatures and items in the morning will be the fact that both our Clearview site as well as our Jeanette sites. So those are our 2 largest EI sites, 3 classrooms at Clearview, 4 classrooms at Jeanette. We'll have both a well nurse's office and a sick nurse's office. If a student appears with any symptoms in the morning, nurses will make that decision as quickly as that's triaged to them. And if the student is presenting symptoms, we would be then placing the student in the sick bay or the sick nurse's office until we can get a parent or guardian to come pick up the child and seek medical attention. Otherwise, we're hoping to differentiate normal cold and flu season items that necessarily don't present identical to COVID as a regular nurse's office, so that when those items persist and the nurses make a judgment call on how they want to move forward, we're giving both options to segregate kids that are suspect to COVID versus those that probably just have another medical need to that. And to that point, the well office at Clearview in particular, things that we're dealing with, feeding tubes, medication delivery, things that have normally happened within the school day, way pre-COVID, and certainly after COVID has ended. We will lean heavily on local health authorities, and this is a key point about notification of exposure to COVID. While we carefully frame this, while we will be relying on parents to cooperate and tell us, we have boundaries of both HIPAA and FERPA. And so we want to make sure that we are doing our best to communicate with parents, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, about exposure to COVID or items or symptoms that would come up with this. And so it's not going to be our job to do the contact tracing. That's going to be once those notifications have been made, parents have engaged with their physician, those contacts stop at our level. The contact tracing is not an IU or a school-based responsibility. That is a local health responsibility. So we're being very clear with our staff. It's not their obligation to investigate. It's their obligation to elevate symptoms that they notice. And then those protocols will go into place with notification, starting with the parent and making sure the parent is aware that their son or daughter may have symptoms that are associated. So please take away from this that it's none of our staff will be doing calls home and reporting back to parents and if there's a suspected case. We're going to handle those on a singleton basis, but the contact tracing that persists with that is going to be pushed to the burden of local health officials to guide us along the way and make that contact tracing. If I may go back to the original document for a moment.
As you do that, Matt, I'll just chime in. So as Matt mentioned about telework, at the advice of PSBA and our colleagues across the state, we do have a policy first read for telework that will help guide the procedures that will be followed for teleworking. And as I said in my email to the board earlier this week, we're in a great position because we have already piloted procedures on telework around Act 93. And we've taken our experience with that as well as the experience of others and some other sample procedures. And we have that up for a first read for this evening for you to take a look at it. But that, we have to be flexible because we may have someone that needs to quarantine but can work from home and still provide services to students. And so we just want to make sure that we are flexible, and I added it this evening because having a first read this evening and then voting upon it on the 25th sets us up to be able to execute it for the beginning of the school year. So that's why I did add it to the agenda. And I normally don't add things after I publish it, but we thought it was important to do that. Okay, Matt, floor's back to you.
I can just come back to this other document momentarily. Try to size it here a little better. Okay, so on your screen, you should now see the at a glance phase reopening guidelines. This was created by our teams. You'll notice that the language under green and yellow is identical. We are treating green and yellow phase as purely identical, exactly how we described on the first page, of up to the number of days that we will be in person. Only the red phase would be provided to go back to the scenario that the all school districts and the IU were in from March 16th to the end of the year. You'll also notice, and again, I'm with Dr. Conway on this, the guidance that's been released in the last 48 hours has shifted to more of a percentage of transmission or rate of transmission. Low, moderate, and substantial are now the three new words that they're using in that. Not sure how that's going to translate to specifically green, yellow, red, but we anticipate there's a similar protocol. So you could, I'm going to say for the sake of argument tonight, green would be interchangeable with low, yellow would be interchangeable with moderate, and red would be interchangeable with substantial.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Matt. Absolutely.
Thank you, Doc. I think that's how I read it. But again, if that would change, certainly we would brief you on that because they've shifted from total cases in a county to now this rate of transmission and such. There is a final thing I want to point out because again, early on in our conversation tonight, I mentioned that our school age services are very supportive of our school districts, and we're engaging in 17 different school districts and one charter school. But in early intervention, even though that is a precursor to our kindergarten programs in every single school district, that is our program. And so on Monday evening, on the 17th of August at 7 p.m., let me just bring up my other screen here. Where did I put it? I do want to highlight that we have, with Mr. Vaughn's help, have set up a Zoom webinar. So it's a little bit different. If you've ever done a Zoom webinar, it's not an engaged activity as we're having here where everybody can see their screens. A Zoom webinar is designed for professional learning. So we're going to be presenting a lot of content that is pre-rehearsed for our early intervention program. And Ms. Needison, Ms. Phillips, Ms. Crest, and I will be then presenting all the documents that we're going to be using in that program as well as protocols. With little ones, we have really strategically tried to craft our message here because families have a level of anxiety. And we are not answering individual emails at this time to do our best because there's a lot of parents asking a lot of questions, and then there's the levels of social media that occur. I mean, there's just a lot of layers to that since this is our program in ages 3, 4, and 5. So we are carefully crafting the message. We've invited almost 1,000 parents to the early intervention town hall and have pushed this out to social media as well as our district student services regional leads at every district. So the special ed directors or student services directors have access to this. And I don't know exactly how many have registered at this point. I will probably know that tomorrow morning. It's a Zoom link that they are able to go in, but we anticipate up to 500 participants in this particular town hall. That's the Zoom cap. The nature of doing it this way is so that we present the information that we know about every single classroom and every aspect of the program to give parents that layer of support and they feel comfortable of sending their students. As earlier mentioned, though, EI students can connect to their classrooms virtually too. I do anticipate the issue of masks may come up. And in a Zoom webinar, our goal is not to get into a public debate over masks. This is a town hall. So we are going into this with a very academic level presentation, but keyword parent-friendly language. People can understand some of the things that we're going to talk about. But the then deliberation part of this the Zoom webinar gives you the opportunity to have a Q&A. So parents can put their questions in real time. And then the four of us are going to answer every single one of those questions as we move forward and as we record that webinar and move forward. If we see any trends and further clarification, we have 2 weeks to adjust. This program and EI does not start again in our classrooms in earnest until August 31st, which is a little bit different than our school age. And so this August 17th town hall, we invite, if you know people would like to come to it, or even preschool providers that are not parents, they want to hear what early intervention is doing. This will summarize our goals for how we're going to handle the new normal of adapting to the virus and to supporting families in virtual settings. I will say, this is the program that really, really knocked it out of the park in the spring. I've seen such tremendous growth of just paperless documentation out of this particular program. Sometimes we'll get referrals from Head Start, from birth to 3 providers, etc. This program has tried to do everything it could to get virtualized so that we can sustain it going forward. And parents, no matter their particular situation, can get access to services even if they're not able to get their student to a classroom. While I'm very proud of all of the services and programs that we offer, I think that because this is we own this program, this is our responsibility in, top to bottom. I'm so proud of all of our therapists and teachers and all of our programs at the IU, but EI has also figured out how to make the entire program highly virtual and highly agile in a few months, which is nothing short of amazing to me. So I encourage you to share this information. Districts are aware. This will continue to be pushed out in social media. We hope that we have a good turnout next Monday night. Our presentation will probably be somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes, and we're reserving 20 minutes for questions. But if it goes a bit beyond an hour, we'll keep that going too. And one final point on this, a lot of people on our team in student services, as we are all assigned to district board meetings, we've seen some of the concerns already. A lot of us have sat in district board meetings via Zoom, and we've seen the concerns. Some of us follow social media. We see the trends across Westmoreland County. And so please know, all of us, the 8 supervisors and a division of over 200 people have really tried to create a framework in which parents understand and families are supported. And there's a real supportive lens rather than trying to be at odds with anybody over their personal decisions or how they feel about the virus or masks or any of those things. All those topics right now seem to be a little bit hot. And we're trying constantly to be consistent and calm and be poised as we have those conversations. That's been a real strategy for our division so far. So Dr. Conway, that concludes my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. And if you could send out that that flyer that you shared about the virtual town hall, I'll make sure that the board does get a copy of that, so then they can share that with others. So that was a lot of information. So let's pause and see if there are any questions from anyone in regards to our number of our health and safety plans.
This is John Cernes. Dr. Thomas, I have a question. In your statement, you said that we're not answering any individual emails that are sent. Does that just go in? Hear me out first. Does that just go into a black hole, or do we respond back to them with the generic message telling them, thank you for your message, we're not responding at this time? Is there anything that we're sending back to them?
Thank you, Mr. Cernes. I need to make a point of clarification there because I don't think that's exactly what I wanted to say. We always answer.
Well, maybe I misunderstood.
No, I think I'm in the middle here. So I agree with you. I need to clarify that. No, we always respond to email. What I was getting at is every parent wants a customized response for their individual situation. We're choosing to respond back, encourage them to come to, in this case, our town hall. And I'm very specific about EI here. This doesn't necessarily apply to our other programs as much. But we have, and I'm sure I know districts have been inundated about, okay, here are my very unique circumstances as a family and a parent. What are you going to do about it? And take that times 1,000 people that want customized answers. We don't have the ability to provide that. So what we have chosen to do is have a boilerplate response of, we understand your question will be answered as a part of our town hall or further communications formally from EI. So they're not going into a black hole or into a, file 13, but they are getting that response back. What we're just pushing pause on momentarily is to give that customized response to every single parent so that our leadership team can keep planning. Because we've been receiving that, especially in early intervention, we've been getting a lot of emails about very specific questions.
Okay, thank you. That makes perfectly good sense. My other question is, have we had any teachers refusing to go into one of our students' homes?
I would not want to speak anything specifically to that, but at this time, I'm not aware of that particular request.
Okay. That's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the group? Okay. Well, hearing none. Again, Dr. Thomas, thank you for your leadership in developing these 5 plans, taking into account all the uniqueness of dealing with all of our member school districts and the non-pubs and in classrooms, itinerant. It was a huge jigsaw puzzle that you were able to direct and bring the team together. And I think we have a very, 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 very strong plans and are ready to react to anything that might be thrown our way over the next few months. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Conway. I just want to value add that none of us is as able as all of us. And so while I will seriously take responsibility and support everything that we have here, this is a team effort. And our supervisors and leaders all across the intermediate unit are to be commended. So if you know anyone personally, please thank them. We are internally.
Excellent. Okay.
Dr.
Alrighty.
Conway.
Yes, sir.
Paul. I unfortunately had a technical problem while Dr. Thomas was speaking and missed some of it, but I managed to reboot my computer and get back into the call. So I didn't know if you were aware that that had happened, but I wanted to make sure you knew that at least that I was back.
Yep, I did see that you came back.
Okay.
So yes, and we'd be happy to provide you any type of follow-up, any questions that you might have then about the plans.
Well, I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I was kind of interested in knowing, what will we do if we have a student that was found to have COVID? And Dr. Thomas was talking about that very thing when I cut out. And so I kind of got the gist that there are nurses, adults available in all of these settings and locations where instruction will be provided that is able to, separate that person from others and call a parent and take appropriate action so we can get the right attention for the student that's required. Do I have that right?
I believe you do. Dr. Thomas, do you want to confirm that?
Yeah, yes.
And then there would be contact tracing, which I didn't hear you talk about, but would there be contact tracing?
Let me just talk on that one piece. This is where sort of our work stops and the Department of Health works, our work stops and the Department of Health work starts. So at the point in which we are dealing with a thought to be or suspected case, that's where we're going to lean on local agency health professionals to make those recommendations. We walk a fine line with especially HIPAA and FERPA reporting, and where it's not our responsibility then to report who the person is, where it came from, how it's going to be mitigated. We will make decisions about our facility or a given classroom, but the contact tracing does not fall to a school or the intermediate unit. We will then immediately engage with health officials to make those decisions.
Yeah, in fact, we have a phone number that we're to call if we have a presumptive or a positive case that's connected to the Pennsylvania Department of Health, since we do not have a county health department. And then once we contact the Department of Health at the county representative of the Pennsylvania Department of Health, then they will provide us the guidance that we need to move forward. And then they take it from there, the contact tracing procedures.
All right. Now, I did hear you talking about social distancing, and all those plans sounded appropriate to me. But I just want to state that I believe that we are really highly dependent upon doing social distancing well. And from what I've seen at Franklin Regional Schools, it's been done pretty well. And everything I've talked with you folks about, it's being done pretty well. And pretty well means to me not like what I've seen on TV coming out of Georgia and things like that. So I just can't stress enough that we are very highly dependent upon doing social distancing well to prevent spreading the disease, because if we spread it, we'll be out of business pretty quickly. So this is my chance to encourage everyone to be diligent on social distancing, and we need to provide a great deal of leadership to all of those folks that we deal with to make this work successfully. And if it works successfully, we'll all be extremely pleased. I can tell you that. That's for sure. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right. So seeing no other questions in the chat, not hearing anyone else speaking up with any questions, a number of motions this evening are centered on the health and safety plans and preparing for the opening of school. There's a resolution that was drafted by Carl Beard's office around if there are any changes that need to be made to the health and safety plan between board meetings. And as I mentioned earlier, a first read of a telework policy as well as procedures. So many of the things that you'll be voting on this evening are centered on that as well. So Mr. Shiner, that would conclude my executive director's report.
All right, very well. Thank you. I don't think we have anything on the WIU Foundation this evening, and several items: correspondence, old business, human resource services, curriculum services, financial services. There are nothing under those items to discuss. And that moves us to item 14, student services. Here we have 7 items to address, specifically SS 2021-1 through SS 2021-7. Are there any items here that anyone would like to pull for further discussion?
Mr. Shiner, if I may, as I shared with the board, unfortunately, Falcon Security Agency needed to pull back from their agreement for providing security services to the Clairview School. And in the meantime, we were able to secure services from Centurion Protection, which is based in Greensburg and provides security services to the community college at Delphi and a few other places within the county. And they are on the approved list of vendors for the Act 44 grant. So we were able to meet with them. They submitted a proposal. We also had another firm submit a proposal, talked with them, and we just felt that this firm was the better of the two for the situation that we have over at Clairview. And so you'll see that there is a rescinding of an agreement and then the addition of an agreement. It's all again for the Clairview School, and that is funded by the Act 44 grant that we secured for this upcoming for the upcoming 2 years. So I just wanted to share that with the board.
I appreciate that. I did see in the supporting documentation the pullback of Falcon Security, and then the new paperwork that supported going ahead with Centurion Protection. And all that looked satisfactory to me. But if there's anyone that has any questions about that, this would be the appropriate time to address those questions.
It's the exact same contractual language, just the numbers are different and actually lower than they were with the previous firm. So it's the exact language contract-wise, just the numbers and the addresses are different.
Very well. Is there any further discussion on any of these items? If not, I'd like to have a motion and a second for approval of these seven
Motion,
items.
Mock. Motion, Mock.
Second, Urban.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded that we approve these 7 items. Christie, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Bretz,
Yes.
Mrs. Callaway Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mrs. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush,
Yes.
Mr. Kendris,
Yes.
Ms. Maines,
Yes.
Ms. Mock,
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Schrock,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
13 yes, motions carried.
Very well, thank you. There are no items to discuss under 15, Technology and Infrastructure Services. So we'll move on to School Board. Here, we've got one motion to address. This is item SB 1920, TAC 85. Are there any discussions on this particular item? This is the item that deals with credit for salary placement. It's a policy that we're putting forward. Okay, it sounds like there's no discussion. Therefore, I need a motion and a second to approve this item.
Motion
L.
made.
Thomas.
Second means.
All right, it's been motioned and the second
Excuse me,
approve.
Excuse me, Mr. Shiner. I didn't hear who the second was.
Mains.
Thank you very much.
This is Maine. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so we can go ahead to vote on SB 1920 TAC 85, which is credit for salary placement. Roll call vote, please, Christie.
Ms. Callaway Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Sioka,
Yes.
Mr. Feldbush,
Yes.
Mr. Kendris,
Yes.
Ms. Maines,
Yes.
Ms. Mock,
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Schrock,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Shiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes,
Yes.
Ms. Bretz,
Yes.
13 yes, motion carried.
Very well. Okay, we'll move on to item 17. There is one item, a policy item, item SB 2021 TAC 1, that's up for the first reading tonight, and that is pertains to telework. And Dr. Conway addressed telework a bit in his executive comments. So the executive director comments earlier on. We're not voting on this item. If there's any questions or discussion, we could have that now. All right, I hear no comments, so we'll move on to, well, it's comments by citizens on non-agenda items, but we received no comments this evening, so I don't think there's anything there. And that gets us to item 19, which is an open forum for any board member discussions.
I just have a question. I'm sorry if I missed this during any presentation, but when is the IU actually opening for business? When will classes start?
Yes, so classes will start for students Wednesday, August 26th.
Okay, thank you.
And then for early intervention, Matt, I think is it the 14th of September?
31st of August.
The 31st of August is our first week. So yeah, 31st of August for early intervention.
Thank you.
You bet.
Dr. Conway, I had one question that we might address at this point. You talked about flexible days, and they might be used when there were, I guess, snow days. Or could you just tell me a little bit more how the flexible days would work?
Sure. So basically, minus a COVID emergency and the operations that we have to conduct, those flexible instructional days by code, LEAs are allowed to have up to 5 days, if it's approved via the application, that they can use alternative remote options to satisfy instructional days. And the application consists of explaining how students would have equitable access to the curriculum, as well as we have to upload sample lesson plans of what students would be experiencing. And those lesson plans have to be from a wide variety of grades as well as subject areas. So basically in a non-COVID year, it gives districts that flexibility to say we're going to have a remote day, let's say during a snowstorm, and count that towards the 180, 990 requirements. It just gives districts that flexibility to use it. And not just for snowstorms, if there's a flood or if there is a water main break or a gas leak, in the springtime, it just gives LEAs the opportunity to still satisfy instructional days via a virtual setting. And so it's almost like by having this application and this process in place, it kind of prepared districts and IUs, for remote learning in those different cases. And so for those who did prepare for that, were kind of ahead of the ball game when it came to the COVID response because they kind of had things in place already.
I guess the thought that comes to my mind on this topic is with the various students that we serve, and there's a wide range of ages and a wide range of locations where our services are provided. I suppose that you might not be able to do that for everyone.
Yeah, and really the application is for the Clairview School as well as Greensburg Partial, or the main, or that's what and I should have mentioned that the application is for school aged, exemptions for that. So really the two programs that are impacted by this and the programs that I sometimes have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and make a decision on whether we're going to have a delay or close. Those are the two programs impacted by this application. All the others would be impacted by the district in which they're located.
All right, that helps me a lot because I wasn't quite sure what it applied to.
Yeah, well, based on what Matt shared and a great overview of all of the programs that we have, it would be very difficult to try to come up with a formula for every single student that we serve. But no, really, for the FIDS, it is for Clairview and for the Greensburg Partial programs.
All right. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, because those are the two programs we have to report to the state that we've provided 180 days of instruction via our PIMS reporting.
Very well. I'd like to apologize to everybody that my computer in the middle of this just locked up and became non-responsive, and I had to shut it down and reboot it and get back in, which fortunately I was able to do. So I'll offer my apologies, and hopefully it'll work better the next time. With that, I think we've come to the adjournment, and I need a motion and a second for adjournment.
Moved Urban.
Second, Thomas.
And
All in
Mr.
favor? Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Thanks a million for making your way here for this special meeting. It's very important.